Azerbaijani Iranians are ethnic Turks who form about a quarter of Iran's total population. So quite a significant portion of that population. But they suffer tremendous discrimination and rejection. Particularly issues of cultural and linguistic rights have been either ignored or violated. And especially with respect to their constitutional rights to education, and education in their mother tongue. Our last voice for today, Fakhteh Zamani, excuse me, is engaged in the defense of the rights of Azerbaijanis and Iranian minorities. She founded the Association for the Defense of Azerbaijani Political Prisoners. So please.
I would like to thank Her Excellency Gay McDougall for her tireless work on the issues faced by minorities all around the world. I would like to thank the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights for their continuous support and for their invitation. And last but not least, I would like to thank all the participants of the Voices event who have inspired me with their passionate stories in the last couple of days. And as Ms. McDougall said, my name is Fakhteh Zamani, and I am the founder and current president of Association for the Defense of Azerbaijani Political Prisoners in Iran. For 3 years, I have traveled throughout North America and Europe to speak at various forums in hope of raising awareness toward Iran's minority groups in their struggle for linguistic and cultural rights. Despite receiving countless threats to halt my work, I have tried my absolute best to represent the friends and families of those who have fallen victim to imprisonment and often torture for simply publicly using their mother tongue and or fighting for the right to study their native language. These are freedoms that we all easily take for granted. These are symptoms of a broad-based system of racism that exists throughout Iranian society. I have unfortunately had to experience racism while growing up as an ethnic Azerbaijani Iranian. As a result, I have remained sympathetic to those experiencing the same racism. I am very pleased to have the opportunity to be at the Voices to make known the nature of racism and the callous action of Iran against those who try to expose or contest the racism. But before I begin, I must make it clear that I am not here to single out a specific race or group. I'm here to discuss the racism as a societal flaw. Racism in Iran not only comes from the government, but from the whole of the Iranian population. It is the dehumanizing system of oppression that begins at an early age and affects the entirety of the person's life. Since more than half of the population of Iran is comprised of minority groups, racism urgently needs to be addressed. I'm going to start by anecdotally illustrating my experience growing up as a member of an ethnic minority group in Iran. Like most Azerbaijani, I grew up speaking my native language in my home. My parents were very proud of our history, language, and culture, and as a result, so was I. They told me stories of great contribution of Azerbaijanis to Iranian society, which truly made me feel like a descendant of powerful and important people. This all changed, however, when I entered elementary school, and I began experiencing racism firsthand, not from my peers, but more shockingly from my teachers. We were forced to learn to speak Farsi in school, and the use of our native tongue was a serious offense. Our history textbooks completely distorted events in favor of the glory of the Persian race. None of us had access to textbooks written in our mother tongue. Persian culture was regarded as the common identity of all Iranians. The important role of Azerbaijani Turks in Iranian history was downplayed. In many cases, Azerbaijanis were demonized and referred to as savages, outsiders who disrupted the great civilizational history of the Persian Empire. Strict adherence to the material was monitored. Representatives of the Ministry of Education entered our classrooms to make certain that our teachers were following the assigned material. Otherwise, their job would be at risk. Our teachers, who were often themselves Azerbaijani, followed the system. The Ministry of Education guaranteed that children who spoke any language other than Farsi were severely punished, usually in the form of suspension or in class beatings. Those who dared to ask to use the washrooms in any language other than Farsi were forced to stay seated and suffer. Racism was not only confined to the classroom. I regularly heard or saw my people insulted on the radio, television, and in the state-run press. This behavior continues to this day. Azerbaijanis are depicted in newspapers and as intellectually challenged, some human members of society, and often referred to as donkeys and cockroaches throughout the Iranian media. Regions that are dominant in ethnic minorities are deprived of economic investment. Shopkeepers in predominantly Azerbaijani neighborhoods are even prevented from using non-Persian names, and their shops are vandalized or closed down if they do not comply. Racism against Iranian minorities, however, is not confined solely to Iran's borders. I have experienced racist remarks and jokes outside of Iran by westernized Iranians as well. Even more disturbing is that racism does not disappear with the level of education one receives. The elite professors, doctors, and others still practice this behavior because it is something that is quite familiar to them. Iranian opposition groups are subject to this too. Now, there are many who would regard this issue as a small one, which pales comparatively to issues such as broader human rights and Iran's nuclear program. Racism against the minority population of Iran, however, should be regarded as a very serious problem, one which demands as much serious attention as any other. Any other issues confronting the Islamic regime. Ethnic minorities comprise over half of the population of Iran, so this problem affects a real majority of Iranian society. Azerbaijanis themselves comprise roughly 1/4 of Iran population, which translates to 3 times of the population of Azerbaijanis in the state of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijanis on both sides of the border share a common language and culture, but while North Azerbaijanis have had independence since 1991 and have been able to flourish culturally and linguistically, South Azerbaijanis have been forced to be Persianized for the last 80 years. Azerbaijanis have no choice but to assimilate. If not, they are marginalized and prevented from social development. Those who dare to speak out against the system of racism are arrested, tortured, and sometimes killed. This became abundantly clear after the publication of a political cartoon in May 2008 depicting miscommunication between a Persian boy and a cockroach, which represented the Azerbaijani people. In the aftermath, Azerbaijani residents in Tabriz, Urmiye, Ardabil, Zanjan, and many other cities took to the streets in protest. The Iranian government's crackdown was swift and severe. Reports claim that Anywhere from hundreds to thousands were arrested. Many were killed by security forces. President of Conscious Abbas Lisani was among one of those who were captured and jailed. His sentence, coupled with the sentence he was given for his refusal to change his shop name to a Persian one, kept him jailed until 6 months ago. During this term, despite several hunger strikes in protest of the harsh treatment he suffered, he continued to be punished severely. Scores have shared the same fate as Mr. Lisani. For example, a 25-year-old linguistic rights activist, Farhad Mohseni, was detained after the anniversary of 2006 cartoon uprising and subsequently tortured and murdered 20 days after his capture. These cases are those which have been publicly reported. Since the Iranian court system is shrouded in secrecy, there may be countless others who are now sharing the terrible fates of the above I mentioned. So, fellow anti-racist activists, the system of institutionalized racism and ethnic discrimination should not be kept in the shadow of our seemingly more important issues confronting Iran. Racism is a problem that, for people like me, means the prevention of linguistic and cultural expression within Iran and a lifetime of cruel jokes and stereotypes. For the braver souls who chose to publicly speak out against this racist practice in Iran, it can mean imprisonment, torture, and even death. These are symptoms of a broad endemic problem which exists within Iranian society. If we are to cure this plague of xenophobia, we will be able to hear various languages and to see cultures flourish and society progress. We will see the beautifully diverse cultures of Iran. Iran celebrate their heroes and study their histories and in their mother languages. Most importantly, we will see the prevention of the torture and death of ethnic minorities fighting for what are their human rights. Raising awareness of this issue is the first step. Together we can turn a small spark into raging fire that burns out the walls of the institution of racism. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." Therefore, we must make the entire world aware of the socially limiting problem of racism that exists within Iranian society and hopefully one day see it erased. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. That's another strong statement.